So I got this massive bag for my studio lights and camera stands, and it didn't take long before it was in the way, everywhere, all the time. The only place it could possibly go is right where my guitars have always stood. But I've got a plan. I'm building a custom rolling shelf that fits the bag and still gives my guitars their place. Oh, and it's my first time building anything like this. And wish me luck. I started by planning the whole build in Moblo 3D to get a clear idea of how everything would fit, especially the studio bag and the guitars. The shelf will have a pull-out platform for the bag at the bottom with a fixed front panel that keeps the bottom section hidden when it's closed. I haven't decided the exact thickness of that pull-out shelf yet. I'll figure it out once I see what material I have left after cutting the main parts. I'm using 21mm MDF for the side panels, 15mm OSB for the back, 19mm MDF for the base, and 15mm OSB for the top panel. Most of the joints will be made with biscuits.
Yes!
No, not those biscuits.
Okay.
These ones.
Wow.
They help align the boards and keep things nice and straight. Although, I didn't end up using them everywhere. You'll see later why I had to change the plan a bit. Above the pull-out shelf, there's a fixed shelf split into 2 compartments. It's useful for storing accessories. And the center divider also adds support to the top panel, so it can handle the weight of my guitars.
Thank you.
I'm not sure how I'll attach this shelf yet. The glue-up is going to be crazy enough with all the other parts involved. And to add to the stress, I've never done a glue-up this big before. What could possibly go wrong, right? The wood I'm using for this build is mostly material I got from work. And honestly, that's what inspired the whole project in the first place. I did have to buy a few extra things, though. A sheet of 15mm OSB and a 19mm MDF board, because the leftover pieces just weren't enough to complete the entire rolling shelf. Let's start cutting. I'll begin with the back panel. It needs to be 1036mm wide, but the OSB sheets I have are nowhere near that. I could have bought a full-size sheet, but it wouldn't even fit in my car. So instead, I'm making the back out of 3 separate pieces, and I'll join them together with biscuits. I'm going to use tape to minimize tear out. So first, I'll mark where the tape should go. And then I'll mark the actual cut lines on top of that. I'm going to use my trusty Skills circular saw to make all the cuts, but I might have made the wrong choice. More on that later. I want to keep the dust to a minimum since I'm working in a garage with other cars than just mine. That's the main reason I'm using the circular saw. I do have a table saw, but that thing throws dust like a wild animal. Same procedure follows for the rest of the sheets that make up the back panel. Next up, we'll be using the biscuit jointer. I've already nerded out over this thing in a full Parkside review, links in the description if you're curious. It's actually been working surprisingly well so far, and I'm hoping it'll continue to do its job without any surprises. I'll be using number 10 biscuits for this part, which I think should be big enough. I'm still fairly new to this machine, so I'm figuring things out as I go, mostly to build some confidence, or at least avoid messing things up completely. Now for the easy part, lining up the 3 pieces and marking where I want the biscuits. In this case, I'll be using 4 biscuits. 10 centimeters from each edge, plus 2 more evenly spaced in between. To keep everything aligned, I'll use a square to draw a straight line across the joint where the boards meet. It's a simple step, but it makes a big difference in the final result. And on to the next piece of the puzzle. I started by clamping down the first board, then adjusted the biscuit joiner to cut right in the center. I did a couple of test cuts on a scrap piece first and everything looked good. Before I could start cutting for real, I had to extend my markings a bit. The base plate on the biscuit jointer is around 5 to 7 centimeters long, so it would have covered the original lines completely. And once that was sorted,
to the fucking point,
I finally started doing what we've all been waiting for, cutting the actual slots. I repeated the same procedure on the other 2 sheets. And now let's jump straight to the glue up. This part was honestly a bit scary.
Here we go into the future.
So here I am in the living room. 2 cast iron clamps on the floor, which I actually bought just for this build. Not exactly a fancy workshop setup, but hey, you work with what you've got. And yeah, gluing up furniture in the middle of the living room might not be the most conventional choice, but it's dry, it's flat, and it gets the job done.
Yeah!
This was my first glue up ever, so yeah, I was a bit nervous. I had no idea if things would line up properly, or if the glue would dry too fast, or if I'd suddenly run out of clamps halfway through. But honestly, it wasn't as bad as I expected. Just fill the slots and the butt joints with glue, line up the boards using the markings, and slowly start tightening the clamps. I tried to stay calm and take my time, double-checking that everything stayed flat and aligned, even wiped away the excess glue like I knew what I was doing.
Help me! Help me!
The glue up is done, and surprisingly, nothing exploded. Now it's time to remove the clamps and see what we actually ended up with. Some glue squeezed out and yeah, not everything was perfectly even, but nothing that the sander can't fix. Next up is cutting the back panel to its final size. Because right now, it's just a massive awkward slab of OSB. I'll clean off any dried glue, double check that it's flat, and then I'll cut one straight reference edge to begin squaring everything up. The next step was to start cutting. And cutting. And you guessed it, more cutting. After a while, I reached the point where the skill saw just wasn't cutting it anymore. It wasn't as dust-free as I had hoped, and I was having a hard time getting my board square.
Oh, fuck it.
So, I ditched the skill saw and switched to my Bosch plunge saw. I noticed the difference right away. Less dust, and at least some improvement in the square department.
Hello, this is Steve from the Square Department.
Hello?
Are you in Square?
I think so.
Anyway, before we start building this thing, I need to cut the biscuit slots for the L joints. They'll help keep the corners aligned during glue up and make the whole structure a lot more stable. The most important pieces to join are the side panels, so we'll focus on those first. This part was tricky, and you had to be pretty precise to get it to sort of work. The back panel already had its slots cut along the sides, centered on the thickness of the board. So of course, I had to try and copy that onto the side panels as well. In this case, 7.5 millimeters. Next step was cutting the slots.
Let's go!
I wanted to try a faster method, so I removed the fence from the biscuit joiner and measured from the top of the tool down to the center mark. That was 9.1 centimeters. Then I measured 9.1 centimeters from the actual biscuit line and placed a stop there. That way I could just push the biscuit joiner up to the stop and make the cut. Was it actually faster? I don't know. I'm definitely no expert with this tool. But hey, if you've got any tips, drop a comment. The L joint wasn't perfect, so I had to widen the biscuit slot just a bit. That gave me some room to adjust and get everything to line up better. Once the L joints were cut, I painted the inside of the side panels. The first coat didn't turn out great, so I sanded it with 600 grit, added another layer of paint, and repeated the process. In the end, the finish came out really smooth. I did several dry fits of the entire piece, made a few minor adjustments, and got everything aligned properly. With the prep work done, it was time to start the actual assembly. That part will take place back in my apartment. Now it's time to start assembling this beast. I'm beginning with the left side panel, using biscuits, wood glue, and a few pin nails to hold it in place. Can't forget those fancy clamps, can we? I was ready to pin nail the side panel, but the big clamps were completely in the way, so I improvised and clamped a square to each corner instead. Not perfect, but it worked. With the side panel in place, it was time to add the base. Same steps as before apply here, but this time I'll secure it with both pin nails and screws from the back and the sides. I was planning to use biscuits on the sides as well, but it turned out to be more work than it was worth. The pin nails and screws are a much quicker solution, and for this part, they'll do the job just fine. Quick check before I bring out the pin nailer. This combination square has been a real lifesaver on this build, probably my favorite square of them all. Time to start drilling. I began with a smaller bit to pre-drill the holes, just to prevent the material from splitting. Then I followed up with the right screws to lock everything in place. I did the same on the side as I did on the back. First pre-drilling with a small bit, then switching to a slightly larger one to let the screw sink in a bit more. MDF doesn't really let the screw bite like softwood does, so this gives a cleaner result. The same steps were applied to the rest of the shelf, and if you're enjoying the video so far, feel free to give it a like. Now let's jazz. So I said no more voiceover and just relaxing jazz from here. Yeah, about that. Things went very wrong. I had prepped the final shelf and the center divider, ready to install them together. But the divider was too wide. Glue was on, biscuits were in, and I had to move quickly. I pulled the divider out, cleaned off as much glue as I could, and tried to save the situation. After that, I continued as if nothing ever happened. Let's roll to the next step, wheels. This part was simple enough. I marked the screw holes for the wheelbase and used a center punch to help guide the screws. But somewhere around wheel number 2, I decided it was time for something important, fuel. So I heated up a pizza and took a quick break. You know, for structural integrity. Then back to the build. Wheels went in one by one. Besides one little mistake, The rear wheels were placed a bit too close to the edge, so they couldn't do a full 360 spin. One move later, problem solved. And the wheels are done. Dual casters, 80 kilos each. Maybe it can do a wheelie?
No!
What a buzzkill. With the wheels sorted, it was time for the final touches. Just the center divider left, and a bit of paint. First, a little prep before installing the center divider. And with that done, we start with tape. I'm using tape as my canvas so I can mark everything properly. And after that, I'll just shoot the damn thing. With my pin nailer, of course. On a windy day, things were moving inside and out. The divider was finally in place, but the project wasn't quite finished. Now came the slow part. Filler, sanding, taping, paint. Repeat. Coats were added, imperfections disappeared, and layer by layer it all started to come together. Structure's done. Now for the clever bit. Before we can build the pull-out shelf itself, we need something for it to slide on. So now it's time to install the drawer slides. This part took a bit of planning, because I'm mounting them underneath the shelf, not on the sides like a normal drawer.
Go away.
And that makes it a bit tricky to get the placement just right. This looks like a good start. No need to overcomplicate things, right? Next up, I measured the distance from the side panel to the first mounting hole. That turned out to be 5.1 centimeters. Then I measured the distance between the mounting holes themselves, 3.5, 6.3, and 25.85 centimeters. Now all that's left is to transfer those measurements onto the base shelf. With all the marks in place, it was time to bring out the drill. But I actually did the mounting a little differently this time. I drilled slightly oversized holes and used 5mm wall plugs. Before inserting each plug, I added a dab of wood glue, just for some extra grip. The plugs were longer than the thickness of the board, so they stuck out on top. To fix that, I taped off the surface to avoid scratches and cut them flush using my Parkside Japanese pull saw. And honestly, that saw made it super smooth. I went with this method because I'm working with MDF, and screws don't always bite well into it, especially near the edges. Let's move on to build the pull-out shelf. This is a 1 centimeter thick OSB sheet, and it's going to be the pull-out shelf. It's the part that'll hold the massive bag this entire build is based on. Now, 1 centimeter isn't exactly the strongest material. So, to beef it up a bit, I'm stacking another sheet right on top, basically doubling the thickness to make it more solid. Hopefully, this sandwich construction will be strong enough to hold the weight. I mean, it should work. But fingers crossed anyway.
You don't scare me.
The glue up is done, and it actually turned out pretty good. There's a bit of unevenness, but just like last time, the sander will take care of that. Now I just need to cut it to its final size and give it a quick sanding. Then we can start mounting it to the slides. Time to see if the slides are as ready to roll as I am. I had no idea how to mount the shelf onto the slides, but after mentally circling the globe a few times, I went with the simplest option. Let me quickly explain what I did. First, I placed the shelf where it was supposed to go. With some measuring and a bit of trial and error, I got the position right and wrote it down. Then I grabbed some fairly narrow double-sided tape, stuck it onto the slides, and carefully positioned the shelf exactly where I wanted it. After that, I pulled the slides out as far as they would go, with the shelf still on, and used my Bosch IXO with the angle attachment. It's more of a toy than a proper drill, but for this tight space, it really did the trick. And just like that, the shelf was mounted. The original plan was to only fasten the toe kick to the rollout shelf with a bunch of screws, but honestly, I didn't trust that plan at all. So I added a few corner brackets for extra support. It might be overkill, but better safe than sorry. And now for the final part of the build, the toe kick. I I have no idea why I went with 21mm MDF for this. It's heavy.
Uh-oh.
But maybe that just means it'll be extra sturdy?
You wish.
Started cutting as usual, but the blade felt dull. Swapped it for a new one. Big mistake. Cheap blade equals bad idea.
Goodbye.
Switched back to the old one and got it done. I figured it was smarter to drill the mounting holes before painting, so I marked them out and did the job while everything was still clean and easy to work with. Then painted it black, messed it up, fixed it. Classic. I wasn't sure if the shelf would handle the weight, so I came up with the idea of adding 3 smaller wheels to the toe kick. That would help spread out the load and make the shelf easier to move, at least in theory. I started by attaching the wheels to a scrap piece of OSB I had painted black. I had a pile of small screws lying around, so I just used whatever looked sharp enough. The plan was to mount this little wheel ramp with small angle brackets. But first, I had to figure out where to stick them, so I measured from the bottom of the wheels to the top of the OSB. Then I transferred the measurements onto the toe kick, grabbed a speed square to feel professional, pre-drilled and screwed the brackets into place. After that, I raised the ramp until the wheels cleared the toe kick and locked it in with a few more screws. And just like that, the ramp was installed. Sorry, 1 screw left. You know what? I think you've seen me drill and screw enough for one video. So let's skip the toe kick install and jump to the good part, the final reveal. After months of work, it's finally done. And honestly, I couldn't be happier with the result. Sure, there were a few mistakes, misalignments, unsquare cuts. I even dropped the side panels more times than I'd like to admit. Note to self, MDF and concrete, not a great combo. Design-wise, I'd call it a mix between Scandinavian and just plain modern. It turned out extremely beefy and pretty boxy though. But hey, it works, and that's more than I expected. And here it is in action. Let's take a quick look around this beast of a thing. It's pretty heavy, so maybe the choice of materials wasn't the smartest, but as you can see, it's not that hard to maneuver around the room. I might lower the wheels a bit though, since the floor is so uneven, but that's a job for future Mika. The pull-out shelf turned out great. It's smooth to operate and features a leather pull for a clean, functional touch. If there's one thing I'd consider upgrading, it's the drawer slides. Soft close rails with a higher weight capacity would definitely take it to the next level. Now, let's take a look underneath. Here you can see all the wheels in action. Look at them go. I might add a few more later on for even better movement and support. So, it looks good empty, but let's see how it handles some actual weight. Here comes the real test. If it can handle this camera bag, then I've actually built something useful. Let's get this thing on there, carefully. All right, fully loaded and still rolling smooth. Honestly, I thought it would be way harder to steer. It's a bit heavy, sure, but still totally manageable, even on this slightly wonky floor. Time to park it and officially call this build done. I'm genuinely happy with how it turned out. But what about you? Would you have done anything differently? Got any upgrade ideas or smart tweaks I didn't think of? Let me know in the comments. I'm always open to smarter solutions. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.